Hey, Tiz here, still reading from Mutual Aid, Building Solidarity During This Crisis and the Next by Dean Spade. I'm on chapter 3, We Get More When We Demand More, part 3. From our current vantage point, living in a world with the most militarized borders, the most expansive surveillance technologies, the most severe concentration of wealth, the most imprisonment in human history, the most military bases and high-tech weapons, and the most advanced mechanisms of propaganda, it can be hard to imagine other ways of living. Disasters often stimulate fantasies of a benevolent government as we face brutal government failure and wish that things were different. Part of the reason our dream of a savior government is so compelling is that it's hard for us to imagine a world where we meet core human needs through systems that are based on principles of collective self-determination rather than coercion. We are accustomed to a situation where the choice is between a government that either denies the disaster's significance and abandons people to its devastations, or a government that responds with inadequate aid that comes with enhanced policing, surveillance, militarization, and wealth transfers to the top. This is no choice at all. Because of how capitalism controls the means for getting by, food, health, housing, communications, transportation, and how dependent we are on systems we do not control, it can be hard to imagine that we could survive another way. But for most of human history, we did, and mutual aid projects let us relearn that it's possible and emancipatory. Mutual aid projects let us practice meeting our own and each other's needs, based in shared commitments to dignity, care, and justice. They let us practice coordinating our actions together with the belief that all of us matter and that we should all get to participate in the solutions to our problems. They let us realize that we know best how to address the crises we face. We don't need to be saved by professionals, government agents, or people elites consider experts. Mutual aid cultivates the practices and structures that move towards our goal, a society organized by collective self-determination, where people get a say in all parts of their lives rather than just facing the coercive non-choice between sinking or swimming, between joining a brutal and exploitive workforce, insurance scheme, or housing market, or risk being left in the cold. How do we imagine scaling up mutual aid to a point where everyone has what they need and gets to meaningfully co-govern and co-steward the structures and conditions of their lives? Because of the dominance of corporate and nonprofit models, people often think that scaling up means centralizing and standardizing projects, but this runs directly counter to the wisdom of mutual aid. Scaling up doesn't mean making groups bigger or merging them into one organization across a region, state, or country. Locally operated mutual aid works better for meeting people's needs in all kinds of situations, including disasters, because our needs are best met by those with the most local knowledge, and when we are the ones making those decisions affecting us. Scaling up our mutual aid work means building more and more mutual aid groups, copying each other's best practices, and adapting them to work for particular neighborhoods, subcultures, and enclaves. It means intergroup coordination, the sharing of resources and information, having each other's backs, and coming together in coalitions to take bigger actions like rent strikes, labor strikes, or the toppling of corrupt governments and industries. Factory takeovers, where workers push out owners and take control of the factory, deciding together how it will run and make fair systems for all, are good examples of this type of shift. A labor strike that becomes a factory takeover is scaling up. Similarly, we might imagine people working to create local energy grids using solar power. The grids would be cultivated and cared for by the people using them, but they might be sharing practices and resources from other groups building and maintaining local grids. Governments and innovation remain local, but knowledge, support, and solidarity are networked and shared. To imagine a society where we share everything, co-govern everything, have everything we need, and don't rely on coercion and domination, we have to shed the capitalist propaganda that tells us people are naturally greedy, and that without police keeping us in our places, we would all hoard and harm. Instead, we can notice, as it's particularly clear in times of disaster, that people are naturally connective and generous, though we often have a cultural baggage to shed from being conditioned by white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism. Again and again, we see people sharing what little they have after storms, food, fires, saving each other. Through mutual aid projects, many of us get a chance to deepen those practices of generosity and make them long-term support systems that we co-govern to help us all survive and mobilize for change. Mutual aid is only one tactic in the social movement ecosystem. It operates alongside direct action, political education, and many other tactics. But it's the one that most successfully helps us grow our movements and build our people power because it brings people into coordinated action to change things right now. As mutual aid expands in the context of the COVID-19 crisis and climate change caused disaster zones and during economic crises, We have a chance to cultivate millions of new resistance fighters, to teach ourselves to work together in long-term ways, and to develop our ability to practice solidarity-based co-stewardship in all areas of collective life. The climate crisis will continue to bring worsening disasters into our communities in the coming years and decades. The stronger we build our networks of mutual aid now, the more prepared we will be to help each other survive those disasters and transform our ways of living together towards liberation.